Hi, welcome to the Summer of Purpose. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have some wonderful speakers in line for the Summer of Purpose, and today I have a very fun, lovely woman to share with you. And some, it's inspiring for me as all these beautiful women that are willing to share with us. So yes, and I wanted to also mention that if you did miss last week, I did do the kickoff, and you can find that video on this Facebook page and on my YouTube channel as well. And there will be links to those for you to find. And there will be some time at the end after the video has finished playing that I can answer some questions. So feel free to enter in any questions or comments that you have and like to share. I would love to hear your feedback. And so to kick off this wonderful Summer of Purpose speaker series with my colleague and friend, Leigh Lubin of Valdez, Alaska. And she is an exceptional yoga teacher and guide, and she has a special gift for teaching people how to access their inner teacher. And so without further ado, I'm very excited to share with you my pre-recorded conversation with Leigh. Please enjoy. Well, hi, Leigh. It's great to have you here with me. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us and be here. And I know you just came in from the wilderness and a long adventure there. And so kind of reacclimate yourself back into the rest of the world and sharing yourself. So I appreciate you taking the time to be here. So yeah, maybe
I'm
just
excited to be here and be part of the Summer of Purpose. It's a great initiative to help people find their purpose and their peace.
Yes. Yeah. I find that we all need reminders and support, and it's an ongoing conversation. It's not like we get information and we get it. It's like it takes time to assimilate and sink in and process and get the ahas. So, it is an ongoing conversation. So yeah. Well, let's start with give us a little bit of background about you and how you got started in your field and what maybe really inspired you to get started in doing what you're doing, and tell us about what it is you do.
My name is Leigh Lubin, and I am a yoga teacher and an educator in general. I've always been an educator. It's my gift. No matter what I'm teaching, it seems to be where I get into the flow. And yoga seeped its way into my life. The universe directed me there, despite some efforts to not follow that path. And I was introduced to yoga when I was 19. A friend said, I'm taking a class at the community college. It's fun. I think you'll like it. And I was blessed with a wonderful teacher who had us come back to center in between every pose and feel where we were. And at the time, as I was overextending myself and biking 7 miles each direction, and always about halfway through the class, I'd just go into Shavasana for the feel and be like, no, this is where I'm staying for the rest of the class. And this is what she's teaching us. And then I practiced on my own for a while and had no interest in teaching, but the universe just kept nudging me in finding a great teacher, and then the teacher that kept nudging me to become a teacher, and then spaces that just opened up with no commitment and no effort to continue the process of me offering yoga. And so
Nice.
teaching for about
all those nudges.
15 years. Yeah.
For 15 years. Wow.
Been teaching, I think, for 15 years and practicing for 25, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe tell us a little bit about your yoga and the philosophy, and why that is something that is really beneficial for you and for practitioners in general. Because I think at some level, I'm familiar with yoga and I know the benefits of yoga. However, not everybody does. And I have had some conversations with people who find, they just, maybe it's just not knowledgeable or don't, or it's got the, like a mainstream preconceived idea of what yoga is. So maybe just share a little bit about what you like about yoga, or what you find beneficial, and what it is for you.
For me, yoga, I kind of describe it, the physical practice of yoga and the spiritual practices of yoga. Sometimes I describe it as the best lover you could ever have, that can meet you everywhere you need. Some days you need caressing, some days you need excitement, some days you need curiosity or adventure. And so I've really found that yoga, in its diversity and the different avenues of entering the practice of yoga, both the physical and the mental and the spiritual, just really is a huge palette of what do I need today and how can I meet myself, as opposed to something contrived or a specific way. Mm-hmm. And so I find that is probably what has kept me coming back to yoga more than anything else, is that it can meet me where I am and with what I need each time I arrive. And I feel like yoga has been branded ingenious. I don't know who came up with the idea that yoga is relaxing, because there's nothing relaxing about the physical practices of yoga. It's hard. And I really feel that the 8 limbs of yoga, with the yamas and the niyamas, the personal practices for yourself and the world, and then the physical practices, it's all training wheels to get you to embodiment or bliss, or a place where you can exist easily, honoring what's going on and being aware of what's going on inside of you and outside of you at the same time. So you don't have to kind of choose between, like, am I interacting with the world outside of me, or if I'm taking care of myself, that you can simultaneously exist in your whole being and receive and interact with the world, that you don't have to choose one or the other. So I think yoga is, the physical practices of yoga are great. I really feel like they're the fountain of youth and keeping me moving and living easily. And then the mental practices are the salve for being human. And the human
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And when you're practicing yoga, it's, it's finding someone that you resonate with. And it's not about needing to know all the history and the what the word shavasana means, or pranayamas, or, that's part of the learning and understanding a process along the way. However, it's just enjoying the awareness of your connection with yourself, not from a not just physical aspect, but bringing yourself more into that body awareness of listening and body connection, right? Of when the more that we're connected with our body, the more we're connected with ourselves and our hearts and our, what's going on within us. And that kind of goes into a little bit about some of the practices that you do is the embodiment practice. Do you want to explain a little bit about what that is?
The embodiment practices that I've been playing with are a culmination of what I started, what really sunk me into yoga in the first place. And embodiment is a word that's being thrown around a lot now. And I really think of embodiment as not simply body, it's the combination of our mental facilities, energy or emotions, and physical sensations, all being able to be online at the same time. So we don't just process with our body or just feel what's going on in our body. It becomes this holistic receiving and experiencing of the world where our whole being can be online. Let's see. It's hard to explain exactly. One of the meditation practices that have weaved into my physical practices comes from the realization process, which is Advaita Vedanta, or non-duality meditation. So kind of that whole idea that we are not separate from the world around us, but at the same time we are. We can have a container,
right,
and maintain a container that's permeable, because we don't want to lose ourselves with the world around us, and we don't want to choose one or the other. I don't know if that's totally clear. It's a hard thing to kind
It
of.
is. It's a challenging thing. But I mean, it's something that I've actually been playing around with too. It's the paradoxes of living, of how to be in the world, and yet as our physical selves, and moving and doing our things, and yet also knowing that we are more than that. And getting in touch, and the knowledge of having those times of being able to be quiet and be able to touch those deeper spots, and getting to those bliss areas, or those areas where we're able to disconnect from the mind chatter and all the things programs that play in this world of form, and things that we've been told and created, and yet being able to disassociate. Well, I don't know, but disassociate, be able to see it and not know that that's not who we are, that there is something deeper under there. And that's where I see the embodiment practices really helping become in tune with all the parts of ourselves, and learning how to accept all the parts of ourselves, and how to do that like simultaneously. It's like you could be upset at something and yet have some compassion and understanding and space for it too, and having them both coexist at the same time. And it's like, that's kind of mind-blowing for our minds, because it's so easy to want to compartmentalize things and have it be one way or another. And it's a training. It's to practice getting out of that way of thinking.
And the embodiment practices, I treat them very much like a yoga practice, or when I'm teaching alignment in yoga, that they're a practice that then we let go, and it just slowly integrates into our being, so that we don't actually need quiet and introspective time to experience bliss, that
Right.
we can experience bliss at the same time that we're connecting. And just knowing that each time we do a practice, it strengthens our embodiment muscle, or our meditation muscle, or our physical muscle, so that we don't need to engage it. It just eventually becomes how it is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That is, you described that perfectly. It is really the practice of learning how, that we don't have to, this is our meditation time, or this is our yoga time, and having these set times. It's that practice of how to live and be, and have that awareness, and the consciousness, the presence, to be able to live in that space more often, as we're moving through the day with whatever we're doing, because it really comes back to, the energy of which we do anything. Really. Yeah. Yeah. I love talking about this kind of stuff.
Me too. I could do it all day long.
So what is your philosophy about, if not just yoga, or about just physical wellness, and how does it relate? I think we've touched on some of this, the emotional, spiritual, and the creative wellness. How does being able to touch be part of our awareness of our physical bodies, and wanting to be more caring and loving towards ourselves, and embracing the aspect of physical wellness, and how that affects all the other areas that we're focusing on?
Well, I think that physical wellness is really a nice balance between strength, mobility, fluidity, and ease. That there isn't a clear definition of physical wellness, except for what I seek is balance. And physical wellness to me means that I have the ability to do what I want to do in my life without it being taxing or injuring. Even something as simple as, not when I'm driving, but parked, reaching in the back to grab something out of the back seat, that movement doesn't then injure me. That I can have the skills to go into the wilderness, or things that fill me up, or dance, or my hands work to create art, or other aspects. And then the physical wellness really comes in because it's the home for everything else. It's the container for the creativity, the spirituality, and all the other aspects of ourself live and thrive in the physical wellness. And so if we don't have physical wellness, it's not that we can't be creative or spiritual or anything else. It just makes it a little bit more challenging. And what I find really interesting about physical wellness is that sometimes we actually need to access it through the spiritual, because our bodies might not be working very well in order to use that realm to find freedom, and we need to come in from creativity or spirituality or emotional intelligence to free up the physical body. But I find that when my physical body is in its most balanced, vital shape, my emotional well-being is better. It's easy for me to emotionally connect with people, and I feel at ease more so with the nuances of spirituality that, as you mentioned before, pull us in both directions, and there's a paradox and the whole human experience. And so I really feel that physical wellness creates more ease for all of those other aspects to evolve in our container.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's just coming to my mind that physical wellness, I feel like, we hear about it a lot, and generally it's in a, and I don't think this is true for everybody, but however, I've experienced this. And so I feel like it's probably relevant that it's easy to feel like we're not doing enough and we're not good enough, or since we can't do X, Y, and Z, we're not physical, or, and to be able to get to a place where accepting, letting go of the judgment around our physical capability and or limitations, and to get to a place where we're more can be accepting of where we're at with our vessels, and that in those respects, being able to move forward with whatever we're choosing to do, whether it be yoga or walking or gentle stretching, or whatever those are, and that that giving ourselves that, hey, this matters and this counts and this is part of that practice, and that the more that we can stick with practicing and doing this on a more regular, consistent basis, then we can see movement and growth in that. And if not, there's still that satisfaction of doing something caring and loving for ourselves, and coming from it from that direction instead of from a shaming, blaming, energy of, you didn't get your 10,000 steps in or whatever, So being able to release the judgment around our physical, wherever we're at physically, and that's part of that self-acceptance of our bodies as they are right now. And then choosing to make the next steps out of love and caring, and not
out of force.
Out of force. Yeah.
One thing I really encourage people to do is to take a step back from making goals and to instead look at the intention behind the goal, so that I find that gives us more grace in changing what we do to meet the intention, as opposed to being attached to the goal.
Love it.
So if my goal is to practice yoga every day for 15 minutes, I need to step back and say, why is my goal to practice yoga every day for 15 minutes? Is it because I want to learn discipline? Is it because I want to do something nurturing for myself? Is it for longevity, health? Because then inevitably, no matter what goal we make, life is going to throw us some obstacle that means that we might not hit the goal. And I really feel like when we step back and look at the intention, we can say, oh, it's not actually beneficial for me to practice yoga this morning, but it is beneficial for me to sit and read a book for 15 minutes because my intention was to take time out and take time for myself every day, as opposed to actually the practice of yoga. So I find that that's a really powerful way to stay out of the blame should game is recognizing what my intentions are, and then recognizing whatever my schedule or my desire or my goals might not meet my intention today. And it's
Right.
it's easier when we divorce from the goal. It's a temporary goal, and my goal is going to change as it meets or doesn't meet my intention of why I want something.
So that's like such a key point, of like looking at where our attachments are, why we think we need to be doing something, and really checking in as to why do we believe that, and is it true, and is it relevant in this moment, and to step back and look at these goals. That the word goal kind of rubs me the wrong way, just because it has, I feel a lot of failure connotation attached to it, and coming into that more intentional space of what is it that I really need, and why, and sometimes if there is that tough love piece in there too of how we're being able to see that, and doing it from a compassionate way, is, so you said that perfectly, of looking at the attachments and being able to shift and change and negotiate. And also looking at where we want to negotiate something that maybe isn't really in our best interest sometimes too, because there is a little sneaky mind there.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's part of the listening to ourselves and learning how to trust that voice and that listening of, okay, yeah, I don't really feel like going and doing my exercise this morning. And yet ultimately I know I will feel better. And this being able to have that moment of check in and see and be able to say, no, I do need to take a hot bath or do something different and shift gears. And because those build that self-trust too, when we do listen to ourselves a lot more. Yeah.
There's a lot of finding the nuance through practice and exploration of, I don't feel like I want to do my morning yoga practice. How do I feel afterwards? Like looking at the whole continuity. A friend that I was talking to the other day said, oh, have you ever heard the saying, if you don't want to do something, then you definitely should? And I said, yeah. And I've also heard that if it's not a hard yes, it's definitely a no. And both of those are very true. And it's the playing with what we do and seeing how it responds in our bodies and in our lives and our emotions.
Right.
Let us know better when it is, if it's not a hard yes, it's a no. And when it's, I don't feel like, but really I should. Both are totally true. And just
right.
moments.
Yeah. And that's that part of getting to know ourselves and know where we have the certain tendencies, and being willing to look and see and watch and check, how does this really feel? And I like that, that thinking through the whole process of, oh yeah, I generally, I know I feel a lot better when I'm done with this. So this is, that is my intention, is to feel better today, or, being able to just really have that check-in time. Yeah, that's awesome. So, let's see here. Besides, I think we've kind of talked about some of the roadblocks to achieving our goals and desires. And, as we said, not necessarily goals, but being able to check into what it is that we're needing and what our true intention is. Are there some specific things that you teach or address these challenges of looking at how, watching, I guess as part of possibly that embodiment practice of really just the tuning in to all areas, and then being able to get more access to whatever that, that our deeper voice?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the key things that I teach is humor and humanity. So even when reminding people what the purpose is for the practice, which is overall balance, and I know different yoga practices have different intentions, but as far as I'm practicing for overall balance and you even use of my body. But I'll remind people when they're trying to do wide-legged, seated, and and folding over, which most people can't actually get very far in a way that's beneficial for their body, reminding them that the only benefit of getting your head to the ground is that then you can smell your yoga mat. Like, there's no benefit. It's probably pretty sticky on the yoga mat. So reminding people with a sense of humor about what they're practicing and why. And then the other thing I really try to do is to teach people the difference between challenge and damage, and give them internal cues and internal ways so that they can discover and teach themselves and play with their own practice, no matter who their teacher is, whether they're in a class, whether they're practicing alone, so that they can start to recognize, ooh, this is hard, but this feels balanced in my body and it feels like what I'm working for. And this is just damaging, and my ego is getting involved that I want to do this, or I feel like I should be practicing for 30 minutes when my body really wants to practice for 20 minutes, or my body wants to practice for 60 minutes. So really trying to give people the internal cues. So I do a lot of teaching, try it this way and then try it this way and feel the difference, so that people can start to really get the nuance from inside themselves instead of from someone cueing them. Because I can cue well and I can see what's going on in people's bodies, but I'm not inside their bodies. And
Right.
what I really want is for everyone to eventually be their own teacher that can adapt everything to what they need at the time. Of course, as best as we're humanly capable of, because we mess that up too, even when we have the skills. So a lot of humor at messing up and just being human and
Right. Being easy on ourselves.
Yeah. And recognizing, I think a big thing is recognizing Shavasana, which is the closing pose for yoga, for people that don't know, where you lie at the end, which is basically a turning off, that everything needs a turning off to settle in. And that because we're not doing anything doesn't mean that nothing is integrating in our bodies or in our beings. And sometimes the pause and the break is really what our nervous system, our muscular system, our spiritual system needs to be able to let what we learned and what we've done settle and become part of us, and then move forward with more grace and strength and humor and patience. I think humor is the biggest thing. Being amused.
Yes, it's just a wonderful reminder. Yes, this is all important here, and and yet it's not serious. And to be able to lighten up, and let go of this grasping that things have to be in a certain way, or just that energy is so counterintuitive to being in balance and and being at ease with ourselves and being able to listen. It gets in the way of the listening and hearing what we're really needing. The laughter is such a great, and we know this.
Yes.
It's great medicine, right?
Yeah, it makes everything easier. And I think being able for people to recognize that if they can't contain more, they're not going to get more from doing more.
Right.
But sometimes, like when I teach workshops or other things, I encourage people, like, if you're hitting your max, just don't do something, just sit and watch, just sit and absorb. Like, if you don't have the capacity to receive more, you're not going to get any more by doing. So just let it soften and find its way and jump back in when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
For your capacity, physically, mentally, spiritually.
Yeah. I think that, that's such an applicable approach to everything that we do, right? I mean, just having that awareness of, where is our capacity, and where are we pushing it, and where do we, and why, and when can we relax and back off and be more gentle with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And maybe that stems from, there are some people that really need to push more because they tend to be more in the gentle, and some people that need to back off.
Yep.
So
Okay.
it kind of depends on the situation and the person. Because sometimes we do, as you were talking about trying to make ourselves practice when we don't feel like it, sometimes we do need to push and
Right.
sometimes we do need to soften. And that's the art.
That is the art and the practice of
Yeah.
checking in. So what is the intention? What is your bigger desire, your heartfelt desire for yourself?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then really always remembering to check in after you do something and seeing how it resonated.
Yes. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, because it's about learning what the information is that we're getting from things. Because just because we make a decision doesn't, maybe we'll, oh, well, maybe, I did have that little niggle that maybe I shouldn't be doing this today, or, and so and then going, okay, now I know what that's about, and being able to go, that's what that voice is, and so having those, that paying attention is, knowing that everything is information, that really there are no right and wrongs, right? It's all information and learning. It's whether or not we pay attention.
Yeah. And then if we pay attention with our whole being, or only our mental aspect, or only our physical aspect, or only our emotional,
Right.
when we analyze it, it's different than when we feel it, than when we experience it. And yeah, it's an ongoing learning.
It's ongoing. Yeah. And that's where, goal tends to, this just doesn't fit because it is an ongoing conversation, with ourselves, with the people around us, with our environment. And so it's just, this releasing that there's some place that we need to be, because it is about that process, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of times we end up where we need to be because there was some hiccup along the way that stopped us or changed our path, and so that we were right in the right spot at the right time, like stopping to say hi to someone, and then this has happened to me, that literally a huge tree branch fell like 10 feet in front of me, and I was like, oh, thank it's heavens I got derailed, because I would have been crushed if I
Right.
literally I would have been crushed if I didn't
Right.
get
Yes.
derailed. So remembering that we're all exactly where we're supposed to be, even if it doesn't feel good.
Right. Yeah. Even if it doesn't feel good, that is, yeah, it is a reminder. Yeah. I definitely agree with that, as well as the, and being able to have the synchronicity and being aware of the things that are going on around us. And yet, it's because it is all about, it's that what's happening in the present moment, instead of thinking I need to get down that trail further, just in responding to the being in that present moment as much as we can. Yeah. That's that part of that practice.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
always as much as we can.
Yeah.
And some days
As best we can.
recognizing that we don't have the capacity to. Sometimes I don't have the capacity to do my practices, and I just recognize that I don't have the capacity to do what I need to do now. So I'm either not going to interact with someone, or I'm going to turn something off, or I'm just going to accept that I feel or act crappy right at this moment for a little while.
Yeah. Yeah. And have it be okay.
Yeah. And that's okay. And that's normal.
Yeah.
It's not normal to feel perfect and happy all the time. That's,
Yes. That's a whole nother expectation, isn't it?
yeah. I really feel that what's happening to our mental health is what happens in the beauty world, where there's these standards that are set that are unachievable and unrealistic. And so people have these expectations of themselves that aren't real, which is, I'm never going to be upset, or I'm never going to be sad, or I'm never going to say or do anything mean. But I feel like it's wonderful, the movement for mental health, but just catching ourselves before we turn it into the ideal mental health or the ideal beauty, that people don't recognize that there's blemishes and there's normal and there's wrinkles and that imperfections, and that those are beautiful, and that the what's being discussed is not a final place. It's a movement. It's one one blip in a very broad experience.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. Well, what advice would you give to someone just starting out on their journey to body and physical transformation?
I think I'd say that all effort is a good effort,
Yep.
even if you get it wrong. Even if you push too hard and injure yourself, everyone pushes too hard at some point, injures themselves, and that's how they learn the brake system. That all effort is good effort, and that taking breaks is important. Knowing that even like when I'm teaching yoga, sometimes I'll give a range of different options to practice, and sometimes people might be physically tired, and I remind them that watching is still learning.
Yeah.
That you don't always have to be physically doing it, even just watching someone else do movements, whether that be walking, whether that be dancing, whether that be yoga, that is creating neural pathways in your brain that make it easier for you to physically move, and you're still absorbing. So remembering the intention of why you're doing it, so you can alter what you're doing when things change. And all effort is good effort, and being amused at the human process, and that you're going to screw it up. It's going to go too far or too slow or to this or to that. And trying to have a sense of humor. And I think the other thing is remembering that as we expand, our expectations of ourselves expand. So we never really meet our expectations. This happens a lot. Like someone will tell me like, oh, I really wish I'd meditated every day for 15 minutes a day. And I'm kind of mad at myself for not doing it. And I remind them that like probably 15 years ago, the concept of meditating wasn't even in your idea of how to take care of yourself. So as you do more physically, spiritually, creatively, anything, you create a bigger container. And so you never actually fill your container or your plate, because all of a sudden you've been exposed to more and you're like, oh, now I can do that too. And you've totally forgotten that you used to want to walk every morning, and that has just become ingrained in your day. And you almost don't give yourself any credit or any gold stars or any brownie points for things that have become normal that once were. So
I love that point, because I think that's so true that, especially in, I think, the physical realm, anything that we do too, is the things that are normal or they're just, or what we think of as a given, we quit acknowledging ourselves for and seeing that, hey, you know what, I am doing something, I am moving my body. And that when we do give ourselves credit and pat ourselves on the back or feel good about ourselves, that energy is what propels us to want to continue doing more. When we beat ourselves up and get into the, oh, I should be, watch the should word popping in there, then that energy will totally want to, end it. And then you don't want to do that anymore. And it's like, doesn't create that and momentum to move forward. It's, we think that being hard on ourselves is how we're going to move forward. And it really is more about relaxing, finding the humor, being compassionate and gentle. And then it's just totally against how we've been trained. And then we're able to make more, clear, more intentional decisions for ourselves from a loving space. Yeah. I love it. And so, is there anything else that you want, that you can think of that would be important to add into our conversation today and sharing? We've kind of touched on some very key points in our journey of physical wellness and intention setting, watching our capacity, renegotiating the situation.
I think we covered it all. For anybody getting started, I'm just reminding them that any movement is good. Literally, even if it is as simple as moving your wrist for 10 seconds. It's better than not moving your wrist for 10 seconds. And then it doesn't have to be long spurts of things.
Right.
Doing short movements out of your normal range without weight. So I always encourage people to start easy and then progress, start at the easiest and then progress. That is the key to not getting stuck.
Yeah.
Clearly, if you do something all the time, your body does get stuck in it.
Get stuck, yeah.
Because of
scientifically, that's
So moving it around. I saw a video the other day on social media of some younger person asked their older boss if he remembered how to skip. And he could not for the life of him skip. It was very amusing to watch, but also I felt so sad. Like, you lost the ability to skip. And I immediately got up and was like, do I remember how to skip?
Yeah, I might have to practice that later too.
Yeah, it's really, skipping is very fun. But it didn't even dawn on me that you can lose the ability to do something that just because you never do it.
Right.
And doing it for 5 seconds is better than no seconds.
Yep. And I just know that, from my own little head, it's like, oh, this is stupid. 5 seconds, that doesn't count. And it's like, those are those voices of, those are not true. And those are just old programming. You know what? I'm just going to do this and, give it, a couple weeks or whatever. And see if you can move through that old stuff that keeps us held back, right? All those voices that tell us silly things. So yes, I love that. Just start moving something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about how to find you. I know you have a website and a presence on social media and some programs that I want to hear about that you have going on.
So my website is yogacurrents.com. And that is also my Facebook handle, and my Instagram handle is at Leigh Lubin, Leigh Lubin. And I have an online on-demand program called Come As You Are, which is meant to, when you arrive into the portal, you get to notice how you're feeling physically and mentally, and then find a class that meets you where you are, because sometimes we're physically exhausted, but our mind is racing, and we need a practice that can quiet our mind and amp up our body simultaneously. So that is a series of 16 yoga practices and 16 meditations to meet us where we are. Likewise, if your head is going crazy, it's not appropriate to try to sit down and meditate. It's like trying to hold down a child in a temper tantrum or something. And so there's different practices to help bring you back online, that invite mindfulness, but don't totally derail or ignore where you're starting, because you got to start with where you are. So those are on demand online. I also have in September, we have one cabin left at the McCarthy retreat, which is embodiment practices. So we practice in the morning for about 2.5 hours and then have the rest of the day to explore Wrangell St. Elias National Park in McCarthy area, because
that's McCarthy, Alaska.
Yes. Thank you. It's one of my favorite places in the state, and it really fills the soul. And so those practices are a combination of the fascia workshop that I created, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, combined with the non-duality meditation, and they've been merged into this really beautiful practice that really gives what I feel like is the essence of what I want people to understand for yoga, for the physical practices of yoga, of how to know what is good for your body and not, and how to move and receive and accept and change as it is. And I will offer to anyone that's Summer of Purpose, you can have 10% off.
Wow.
If you just shoot me an email from the website instead of registering, then I'll send you an invoice for 10% off. There's one cabin left for that. And then I also do a very lovely yoga sea kayak retreat in Belize, and that is in January. And sorry, we go back a step. The McCarthy Alaska retreats in September 8th through 11th, I believe. And then Belize is knock your socks off. We start with in the rainforest at a really nice lodge that you don't even need to leave if you don't want to, because it's on a reserve and it's just an amazing location right on the water. And we do a little bit more workshopy there, where we have a little bit more yoga. But then I'm a big believer in exploring where you are, not just going to do yoga. So you still have options to hike and kayak and go caving and explore Mayan ruins. And then the second half of that trip, we go to Half Moon Key, which is a universal, not universal, it's not the word. It's a marine sanctuary, world marine sanctuary. And there we just do yoga in the morning before we go out and snorkel and kayak sail and fish. And it's a pretty lovely, have your cake and eat it too. Get some learning, get some play, get some adventure, get some relaxation, get a lot of biological diversity. And it was such a hit last year that 2 people came home and immediately signed up to come on the same trip next year.
Love it.
Yeah.
It does sound pretty fabulous.
It's pretty fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And we will put all Leigh's contacts in the Facebook comments and whatnot below. We'll make sure we get that posted for you guys so you can find Leigh. And I just wanted to thank you again for being here. And I want to also say that I have taken several workshops with Leigh and have been filled up and inspired and new perspectives on things. And so I definitely want to say she's a wonderful, awesome instructor, teacher, mentor. So thank you for everything that you've given me and provided and shared. And thank you for today. It's been an honor and fun conversation.
Yeah, I really appreciate being part of the Summer Purpose, and that you're spreading your good, and the possibility for people to be more gentle and more playful and more full all at the same time. And I really appreciate what you're doing, and I'm honored to be part of it. And I really enjoyed our conversation as well. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. We will talk with you very soon. Thank you so much for participating and listening in today with Leigh and myself. I have to tell you that I gleaned, again, just listening to our conversation, several reminders and how helpful they are. And just another reminder there that the reminders are so helpful, and to keep putting ourselves in front of things that are inspiring and that can guide us in the direction of our intentions and where we want to go. So once again, Leigh's information will be part of this video. You can also find all the videos here on the Facebook or on the my YouTube channel. And that you can also find the ebook guide if you haven't already accessed that. You can still do that, and that'll also be included after this video. And I want to give you a little heads up that next week, I'm really excited to also bring you Leah Campbell-Baditcher. She is a fabulous artist, author, and she's a master creativity coach. And she's one of my coaches. So I'm really excited to share my conversation that I'm going to have with Leah on emotional well-being. So I hope that you can join us next week as well. Same time, same place. And of course, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to let me know here on this platform or via my email. You can access that via my website, galadesigns.com. And also just a little heads up that I have a new podcast dropping tomorrow, Wednesday, which you can find on any of the platforms for podcasts. And you can also access that also off of my website as well. So yes, so next week, July 25th with Leah Campbell-Baditcher. And I hope that you can join us. And if not, the videos will be available for you as well. So thank you so much for being with us today. And I hope that you feel some inspiration and find some humor and be kind and gentle with yourself and listen to you and not the outside voices. And any movement is good movement. So enjoy and thank you again.